The howling blizzard nearly swallowed Olivia Anderson's scream when the wagon wheels snapped, sending her supplies scattering across the snow-laden path just a mile from her homestead. The Colorado Territory of 1873 was unforgiving in the best of times, but winter in these mountains tested even the hardiest souls. Olivia, 26 and widowed just 8 months prior, stared at the broken wheel with tears freezing on her cheeks, knowing what this meant: starvation if she couldn't salvage enough to survive until spring. "You've faced worse," she muttered to herself, gathering what she could carry. The storm intensified, transforming the familiar trail into a bewildering white void. By the time her small cabin came into view, her fingers had lost feeling and her breath came in painful gasps. She stumbled through the door, dropping her meager salvage on the rough-hewn floor. Too exhausted to care about proper procedure, she left the door ajar, focusing instead on reviving the dying embers in her hearth. Proper widows closed their doors tight to indicate mourning and unavailability, but Olivia had abandoned such customs months ago. Out here, practicality trumped tradition, and an open door meant you were alive and willing to receive help, something she'd soon need desperately. The provisions she'd saved would last 2 weeks at most. Her husband Thomas had been the hunter, not her. His rifle hung above the fireplace, rarely touched since his accident in the silver mine. Now, as snow piled against her open doorway, she wondered if leaving it open was an unconscious cry for help or a final surrender to the elements. 3 days later, as Olivia rationed her dwindling supplies, hoofbeats approached through the howling wind. She grabbed Thomas's rifle, her hands trembling. Visitors in winter were rare and not always welcome. A tall figure appeared in the doorway, snow swirling around his broad shoulders. He removed his hat, revealing a face weathered by sun and wind, yet surprisingly youthful beneath a week's growth of beard. His eyes, clear blue like summer sky, locked with hers. "Madam," he said, his voice low and respectful, "your door's been open. Thought someone might need help." Olivia lowered the rifle slightly. "Who are you?" Preston Northcott was passing through to Silverton when the storm hit. He gestured to the snow-filled landscape beyond. "Saw smoke from your chimney. Door's been open 3 days straight according to tracks, not common in winter." "My wagon broke," Olivia explained, still cautious. "I lost most of my supplies." Preston nodded, understanding immediately. "That's grim news this time of year." He shifted awkwardly. "I don't mean to impose, but I've got supplies on my horse. If you'll permit, I can help secure what you need until the pass is clear." Olivia studied him. His clothes were worn but clean, his manner straightforward. No wedding band, a gun at his hip but holstered properly. Most telling was how he remained at the threshold, not presuming entry despite the bitter cold. "How do I know you're not an outlaw?" she asked. A small smile touched his lips. "Fair question. Got papers from the Colorado Rangers if you'd like to see them. Was a scout for them until last spring." Olivia hesitated, then gestured him inside. Desperation made the decision easier than it should have been. "Close the door behind you, Mr. Northcott. No sense heating all of Colorado." Preston stepped inside, bringing his saddlebags. Only after setting them down did he turn and gently push the door closed against the gathering snow, the latch clicking softly. "That door's been open since Thomas died," Olivia said quietly, surprising herself with the admission. "Seemed wrong to close it, like I was shutting him out completely." Preston removed his gloves but said nothing, respecting her grief with silence rather than platitudes. He simply nodded and began unpacking his supplies: jerky, coffee, flour, and ammunition. "I can hunt for you," he offered. "Stay until you're stocked for winter if you'll allow it." "Can sleep in your barn." Olivia's pride warred with pragmatism. "Why would you help a stranger?" "Because someone once helped me," he answered simply. "Winter of '67. Got caught in a blizzard near Laramie. Family took me in for 3 weeks. Man taught me to track properly. Never forgot that debt." The honesty in his voice convinced her. "The barn's not fit for habitation," she said finally. "You can use the bench by the fire. First sign of trouble, though, and you'll shoot me," he finished with a slight smile. "Understood, Mrs. Anderson." "Olivia Anderson," Preston nodded. "Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Anderson. Now, if you don't mind, I'd like to check your food stores. Need to know what we're working with." For the first time in months, Olivia felt a small weight lift from her shoulders. Perhaps leaving that door open hadn't been surrender after all. The first week passed in awkward coexistence. Preston repaired her broken wagon, reinforcing it against future journeys through mountain snow. Each morning he ventured out to hunt, returning with rabbits or occasionally a deer. Olivia preserved the meat, smoking some in the small smokehouse Thomas had built their first year on the homestead. "You're good at that," Preston commented one evening, watching her hands work with practiced efficiency. "My father was a butcher in St. Louis," she explained. "He taught me preservation before I could properly write my name. Useful skill out here." Preston sipped his coffee. "More useful than most of what they teach back east." Olivia found herself studying him when he wasn't looking. His movements were efficient, his manner quiet but not brooding. Unlike Thomas, who'd filled every silence with chatter, Preston seemed comfortable with quiet. Yet when he did speak, his words carried weight. "How long were you married?" he asked one night as they sat by the fire, the wind howling outside. "5 years." Olivia's fingers twisted the simple band she still wore. "Thomas came west with mining fever. I followed a year later once he'd established his claim. It never produced the fortune he dreamed of, but we were making do." "The mine take him," she nodded. "Tunnel collapsed last spring." "They brought him home broken. Lived 3 days." Preston's eyes reflected the firelight. "I'm sorry." "Thank you," she hesitated. "Have you ever been married, Mr. Northcott?" "Preston, please." He shook his head. "Never found the time or the right woman willing to follow my particular path." "And what path is that?" He considered her question seriously. "I've been tracking a man for 2 years. Man who killed my brother during a bank robbery in Denver. Rangers couldn't spare the manpower, so I took leave to find him myself." Olivia stiffened. "You're a bounty hunter?" "No, madam. Just a man seeking justice." His voice remained calm, but his knuckles whitened around his coffee cup. "Last I heard, he was heading to Silverton. That's why I was passing through when the storm hit. Will killing this man bring your brother back?" The question escaped before Olivia could reconsider. Preston's gaze met hers, unflinching. "No, but it might stop him from leaving more widows and orphans behind." The honesty in his answer disarmed her expected objections. There was no bloodlust in his words, only a weary determination that spoke of duty rather than vengeance. "I understand," she said finally. And strangely, she did. As December deepened, the rhythm of their days settled into something approaching comfort. Preston taught Olivia to shoot Thomas's rifle properly, positioning her arms with gentle, impersonal touches that nonetheless made her increasingly aware of him as a man, not just a helper. "Breathe out as you squeeze," he instructed, standing close behind her. "Don't pull the trigger, squeeze it slowly." The rifle cracked, and the target, a tin can placed on a fence post, flew backward. "I hit it." Olivia lowered the rifle, turning to Preston with a smile that felt foreign on her face. "When had she last smiled?" "You're a natural," he praised. "Few more sessions and you'll be dropping dinner from twice that distance." Pride warmed her cheeks. "My father never approved of women handling firearms, said it wasn't ladylike. With respect to your father, survival isn't about being ladylike." Preston reloaded the rifle before handing it back. "Out here, practical trumps proper every time." They were the same words she'd thought to herself the day she'd left her door open. Christmas approached, marked only by the calendar Olivia kept on her cabin wall. On Christmas Eve, Preston returned from hunting with not only a wild turkey but also a small pine sapling, roots wrapped in burlap. "What's this?" Olivia asked as he propped it in the corner. "Christmas tree," he answered, looking suddenly uncertain. "If that's all right, noticed you didn't have one." The simple gesture brought unexpected tears to her eyes. Last Christmas, Thomas had been bedridden but alive. They'd exchanged small gifts and pretended the future still held possibilities. "It's perfect," she managed, turning away to hide her emotion. "I have nothing to decorate it with." Preston pulled a small package from his pocket. "Might have thought of that." Inside were pine cones he'd gathered, along with berries strung on twine. That night they decorated the tiny tree together. Preston told stories of his childhood Christmases in Illinois, of his brother's pranks and his mother's determined celebrations despite their humble circumstances. She believed holidays were more important when times were hard, he explained. Said joy was an act of defiance against life's cruelties. "She sounds wise," Olivia said softly. "She was." His smile held sadness. Fever took her the winter after my brother died, father followed within the year, so you're alone. The realization made her heart ache. Preston looked at her across the small cabin. Aren't we all in some fashion? I suppose so. She hesitated. But perhaps not tonight. They stayed up late that night, sharing stories and memories. For Christmas dinner the next day, Olivia prepared the turkey with herbs she dried the previous summer. Preston contributed a bottle of whiskey he'd been saving, pouring them each a small measure. To absent loved ones, he toasted solemnly. Olivia raised her glass, and to unexpected companions. His eyes held hers a moment longer than necessary before he drank. As December gave way to January, Olivia realized Preston had been with her nearly a month. The door had remained closed since his arrival, keeping in the warmth they created together through daily work and evening conversations. One morning she found him staring at the calendar. The passes to Silverton should be clearing soon, he said without preamble. The statement struck her like cold water. Of course he would leave. He had his mission, his promise to fulfill. The man who killed his brother awaited in Silverton, unaware justice approached. Yes, she agreed, her voice steady despite the sudden hollow feeling in her chest. Another week, perhaps two, Preston nodded, turning to face her fully. I need to finish what I started. I understand. And she did, though understanding didn't ease the growing ache. That night, as they sat by the fire, the familiar, comfortable silence had transformed into something heavier, laden with unspoken thoughts. I've been thinking, Preston finally said, staring into the flames. After Silverton. After I find him. Olivia waited, her heart beating too fast. I don't know what comes next, he admitted. Been focused on this for so long, haven't considered the after. What would you like to come next? She asked softly. His eyes met hers, vulnerability plain in their blue depths. Something quieter, something with purpose beyond vengeance. There's purpose here, she offered before she could reconsider. This land needs tending, it's too much for one person. The implication hung between them, neither willing to name it directly. Preston stood, moving to the window. I can't ask that of you, Olivia, not until I've finished what I started, and even then. He turned back to her. You deserve more than a man haunted by ghosts. We all have ghosts, she countered, rising to stand before him. I see Thomas every time I look at that door. Every morning when I wake alone. That's different, is it? She gathered her courage. You think your need for justice makes you unworthy of happiness. That grief disqualifies us from finding something new. I think, he said carefully, that I need to finish this chapter before I can begin another. Olivia stepped closer. Then finish it. But know that door will remain closed until you return. His breath caught. Olivia. I'm not proposing marriage, Preston, she clarified, though her racing heart suggested otherwise. I'm offering a place to return to, a purpose beyond revenge. Preston's hand rose hesitantly, brushing a strand of hair from her face. The touch sent warmth cascading through her, awakening feelings she'd thought buried with Thomas. I would like that very much, he said quietly. In the firelight, with snow falling softly outside, Preston bent down and kissed her. It was gentle, questioning, leaving room for retreat. Instead, Olivia stepped closer, her hands finding his shoulders. When they separated, both slightly breathless, Preston rested his forehead against hers. I will come back, he promised. But I need to do this right. Need to bring him to justice, not just kill him. I understand, Olivia whispered. I'll be here. 2 days later, Preston prepared to leave. The weather had broken, offering a clear window to reach Silverton before the next storm. He loaded his horse methodically, checking each strap with careful precision. Olivia watched from the doorway, a shawl pulled tight around her shoulders against the morning chill. The provisions she'd prepared for his journey sat in a pack by his saddle, enough to last a week. The marshal in Silverton is an honest man, Preston told her as he worked. Name's Daniel Washburn. If anything happens while I'm gone, you tell him I sent you. Nothing will happen, Olivia insisted. Preston paused, turning to face her. All the same, if I'm not back in 3 weeks, you will be. His expression softened. Olivia Anderson, you are the stubbornest woman I've ever met. Good thing, too, she replied, forcing lightness into her tone. Otherwise, I'd have perished long before you found me. Preston finished with the saddle and approached her, taking both her hands in his. I have something for you. From his pocket, he withdrew a small wooden carving, a bird in flight, delicately rendered despite the simple tools he must have used. You made this, Olivia asked, turning it in her palm. Been whittling at night when you were asleep. My father taught me. His thumb brushed across her knuckles. It's a swallow, they always return home. Tears pricked at her eyes. It's beautiful. When I come back, Preston said solemnly, I'd like to speak with you about possibilities, about futures. His eyes searched hers. Is that acceptable? More than acceptable, she whispered. He kissed her again, longer this time, as if storing the memory. Then he mounted his horse, tipping his hat to her with a smile that didn't quite mask his concern. Leave a lamp in the window, he called as he turned his horse. I will, she promised. Every night. Olivia watched until horse and rider disappeared around the mountain bend, then closed the door firmly against the cold. The cabin felt emptier than it had even after Thomas died, the silence more profound for having known Preston's quiet company. She placed the wooden swallow on the mantel above the fireplace and returned to her chores, determined to keep busy rather than count the days until his return. A week passed slowly. Olivia maintained her routine, tending to the small barn where they'd kept the chickens and her milk cow. She practiced her shooting daily, determined to make Preston proud upon his return. Each night she lit the lamp as promised and placed it in the window before going to bed. In the second week, a traveling peddler stopped by, surprised to find her door closed. Usually leave it open, don't you, Mrs. Anderson? He asked as she purchased salt and coffee. Not anymore, she replied with a small smile. Got someone coming back to me. The peddler raised an eyebrow but asked no further questions. Before leaving, he passed along news of Silverton. A bank robbery attempt had been foiled, the culprit arrested. The description matched the man Preston sought. Olivia's heart raced. This might mean Preston would return sooner than expected. She found herself watching the trail more frequently, hoping to see a familiar silhouette. 2 weeks stretched into 3 with no sign of him. Worry gnawed at her. Had something gone wrong? Was he injured or worse? She considered riding to Silverton herself but dismissed the idea. The journey was dangerous for a lone woman, and leaving might mean missing his return. On the morning of the 23rd day, a fierce snowstorm blew in from the north. Olivia secured the livestock and brought extra firewood inside, preparing for several days of confinement. As darkness fell, she lit the lamp and placed it in the window, though she doubted anyone could see it through the whiteout conditions. The storm raged through the night and well into the next day. Olivia dozed fitfully in her chair by the fire, jerking awake at every sound, certain she heard hoofbeats only to realize it was the wind or creaking timber. On the evening of the second day, as she stirred a pot of stew, a heavy thump against the door made her jump. She grabbed Thomas's rifle, approaching cautiously. "Who's there?" she called, voice steady despite her racing heart. No answer came. She eased the door open a crack, rifle ready, and gasped. Preston lay half-conscious in the snow, his face pale beneath a layer of ice crystals in his beard. Blood stained the snow beneath him. "Preston?" She dropped the rifle and dragged him inside with strength born of desperation. His clothes were frozen stiff, his left side darkened with what appeared to be a gunshot wound. "Found him," Preston mumbled through blue-tinged lips. "Brought him in." "Don't talk," Olivia commanded, stripping away his frozen outer garments. "You need to warm up." She worked quickly, stoking the fire to blazing while heating water. The wound in his side had bled heavily, but appeared to have stopped, whether from clotting or freezing, she couldn't tell. When she'd removed his sodden clothes and wrapped him in blankets by the fire, she cleaned the wound as best she could. "Bullet went through," she noted with relief. "Clean exit." Preston's eyes fluttered open, focusing on her face. "Followed your lamp," he whispered. "Thought I wouldn't make it." "You made it," she assured him, brushing ice-crusted hair from his forehead. "You're home now." A ghost of a smile touched his lips before he drifted into unconsciousness. Olivia didn't sleep that night, maintaining the fire at full blaze and checking Preston's pulse regularly. By morning, color had returned to his face, though fever set in by midday. She bathed his forehead with cool cloths and forced broth between his lips when he was lucid enough to swallow. "You're the stubbornest man I've ever met," she told him during one such moment, echoing his words to her. His fever-bright eyes found hers. "Had to come back," he mumbled. "Promised." For 3 days, Olivia fought for Preston's life as determinedly as she'd fought for her own survival all winter. She cleaned his wound with whiskey. packed it with herbs, and prayed more fervently than she had since Thomas's death. On the fourth morning, she woke from an exhausted doze in her chair to find Preston watching her, his eyes clear for the first time since his return. "You look terrible," he said hoarsely. Olivia laughed, relief washing through her. "You're one to talk. How long was I out? Almost 4 days." She moved to check his forehead. The fever had broken. "I thought I might lose you." Preston caught her hand, pressing it to his cheek. "Never." "Too stubborn." "What happened?" she asked, settling beside him. He sighed. "Found him, Marcus Turner. He joined a gang planning another robbery." Preston's eyes darkened with memory. "I confronted him outside the bank, identified myself as a ranger. Told him I was bringing him in for my brother's murder." "And he shot you?" Preston nodded. "Not before I got the drop on him. Marshall arrived with reinforcements. They took the whole gang into custody." A small, satisfied smile touched his lips. "Turner will hang for what he did. Legal justice, not vengeance." "I'm proud of you," Olivia said softly. "Didn't feel finished, though," Preston continued. "Not until I got back here." His eyes held hers. "To you, recovery was slow but steady." By February, Preston could move around the cabin without assistance, though the ride to town remained beyond his strength. They settled into a new rhythm, with Olivia handling the outdoor chores while Preston repaired tools and carved more wooden figures by the fire. One evening, as they sat together watching flames dance in the hearth, Preston broke their comfortable silence. "I've been thinking about those possibilities we discussed before I left." Olivia's heart quickened. "Have you now?" "I have." He turned to face her fully. "I can't offer much. Don't have land or wealth, just my hands and what skills I possess." "Those hands built this," she said, gesturing to the latest carving. He'd completed an intricate model of her cabin. "Those skills kept us fed all winter." "What I'm trying to say," Preston continued, uncharacteristically hesitant, "is that I'd like to stay, not just for spring but for good." "As what precisely?" Olivia asked. Needing to hear him say it, Preston reached for her hand. "As your husband, if you'll have me. As a partner in this life you've built." His eyes never left hers. "I love you, Olivia Anderson. Knew it before I left, but was too bound by the past to admit it." Tears welled in Olivia's eyes. "And now I understand what my mother meant about defying life's cruelties with joy." His thumb brushed across her knuckles. "You are my joy, Olivia, my reason for coming back." She leaned forward, pressing her forehead against his. "I love you too, Preston Northcott, have for longer than I was willing to acknowledge." They were married in April, when the mountain passes had cleared enough for the circuit preacher to reach them. The ceremony was small, just a few neighbors from nearby homesteads who had been surprised to find Olivia's door firmly closed that winter. "Never thought you'd remarry, Mrs. Hadley commented at the small reception afterward, "Especially not so soon after Thomas." Olivia glanced across the room where Preston stood chatting with some of the men. "Neither did I," she admitted, "but life has its own timeline." By summer, they had expanded the garden and built a larger smokehouse. Preston proved skilled with livestock, and their small herd of cattle grew steadily. He took occasional work as a guide for survey teams, using his tracking skills to support their growing operation. In autumn, when the aspens turned gold against the mountainsides, Olivia confirmed what she had suspected for weeks. She was expecting their first child. "A baby," Preston whispered, hand resting gently on her still flat stomach. "Our baby. Due in spring," she told him. "When everything begins anew." As winter approached again, they prepared more thoroughly than ever before. The barn was filled with hay, the smokehouse with meat, the root cellar with vegetables and preserved fruits. This time, when the first snow fell, Olivia felt only anticipation rather than dread. On the anniversary of Preston's arrival, the night he had closed her door from the inside, they sat by the fire, her head resting against his shoulder, his hand on her growing belly. "Do you ever regret it?" she asked suddenly. Stopping here that day, Preston considered her question seriously, as he did all things. "Only that I didn't find you sooner," he answered finally. "Though perhaps we weren't ready for each other before then." Olivia nodded, understanding completely. "We both needed to finish certain chapters and begin new ones." He kissed her temples softly. Together. Outside, snow began to fall, blanketing their homestead in pristine white. Inside, the fire crackled warmly, casting golden light across the wooden swallow on the mantel the bird that had returned home. "I'm glad you closed that door," Olivia murmured, eyes growing heavy with contentment. Preston's arms tightened around her. "I'm glad you left it open long enough for me to find you." As they drifted to sleep before the dying embers, the winter wind whispered around their cabin, finding no entrance through the securely closed door, a door that would remain so through all seasons, now that the right man had closed it gently from the inside.